PEDO, PEDO, PEDO. That's right. That's those four letters that make up the word PEDO is the topic of today's discussion. Stay tuned as we talk to a Dr. Quinn, who's going to tell us how she wins in becoming a pediatric, board-certified pediatric dentist. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Dr. Darwin, the new dentist coach, for another episode of Ask Dr. Darwin on the New Dentist Podcast Show, where we talk about getting into dental school, surviving dental school, getting into residency, and then life as a new dentist. Guys, be sure that you continue showing your love, but also spreading the love to your friends and colleagues, not here in the States, but also throughout the world by sharing this content, liking, and then also making sure that you type in some comments and some information that you want to see more content like this and or other topics related to the content. All right? Sharing is caring. Also, this episode of Ask Dr. Darwin is being brought to you by GetIntoDentalResidency.com. Right down here, GetIntoDentalResidency.com, the ultimate resource to help you achieve your goal in becoming a dental resident, but also a dental professional, with resources tailored to fit and help you get into the residency of your dreams this cycle right now. All right. For more details, go down below and use that to help you with this upcoming cycle that's coming. But right now, we're going to be talking about the cycle that just passed. Today, we're joined with Dr. Quinn, who, for better words, who has been eating, breathing, and living this opportunity to become a pediatric, board-certified pediatric dentist. So, Dr. Quinn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing your journey about getting into PEDO and what it takes. So we're going to jump right on in because people are excited, but they're also anxious to hear how you did it. So first thing, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about who you are for those that are meeting you for the first time as well.
Well, hello guys. I'm Dr. Quinn Amukamara, but I go by Dr. Quinn because my last name is a little bit too hard to pronounce, but that's okay. I graduated from LECOM 2018 and been working in corporate practice for a couple years now, and just got into my dream school for pediatric dental residency. So I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Yeah, we're excited for you. We've been with you on this journey for the last 6 months, 5 months, I guess it is. We've been working together and getting you ready, and that day came a couple weeks ago. So why PEDO? Let's talk about that. Why did you pick PEDO instead of general dentistry, instead of some other discipline within the profession?
Yeah, there are many factors that were involved as to why I picked pediatrics, but the one main factor is prior to dentistry, I've been a nurse since I was 19, 20 years old. So I've been working with pediatrics for many years, and I've worked specifically with special needs patients that are special needs that are medically compromised. So when I graduated dental school and got into the real world, definitely, working with different types of patients, treatment plans and so on and so forth, doing different types of procedures. Like I said, pediatrics is what I've been doing for a long time, and being around pediatric patients, being around the kids, it's what I know, it's what I do, it's what I eat, live, and breathe. And I decided to definitely pursue that for sure. So that's why pediatrics.
Awesome. So let's talk. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. And another reason why is that I put in my personal statement. There's two things that I put in my personal statement. One I can't talk about, it's a little private. But the other one is that in the medical field, especially when patients are special needs with medically compromised, everything else was pretty much focused on, lungs, heart, G tubes, you name it. The one thing that was, neglected the most was the oral cavity. So that definitely helped push me along. So, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that helped all of us kind of understand, that will help us understand about how you pushed along through this process is how you kind of got prepared for your application. So share with us a little bit about the steps that you took to prepare for your application, because it may be a little bit different being that you've graduated and have been working for more than 2 years since dental school. So that can change one's strategy somewhat in certain parts of the application.
Right, right. How did I prepare? So this is my second time applying and got in the second time. The first time was interesting. Like I said, I wanted to get into this field and I applied, no interviews, nothing whatsoever. And during COVID, it was during lockdowns when I applied. And I learned a lot from that. I did. I learned a lot from that. It was a humbling experience. From there, instead of the first time I applied to 4, the second time around I applied to 14. I also applied to GPRs as well that had PEDO residencies. What else? I also tried to expand on my extracurricular activities. Now, when it comes to the extracurricular activity, the dental consultant actually just fell into my lap and I snatched it right quick. I said, yes, this is what I've been praying for, and it delivered. So definitely assessing the first time and improving on myself the second time. And then I know that during getting into dental school, going through the interviews during dental school, I know that interviews are really hard for me. And I wanted to make sure that I do well. So I created my own question list to prepare in case I get accepted to get an invite for interviews. And then also, talking with you and going through that experience with you and the training as well to improve on my interview skills. So
Yeah,
that's
that's so much of an important part of this whole process is the interview and the preparation for the interview, because that's your one and only FaceTime, in person, or even virtual opportunity where they can see you and you can see them, for that you can make the first and the last best impression
right.
in those interviews. So everyone's always kind of anxious and nervous about it, and that's usually because either it's high stakes, right? It's high stakes. This is a specialty that you're going to be getting into and doing for the rest of your career. For many people, it's high stakes also because of the fact that it's going to elevate you from where you are income-wise as a general dentist to another tier of income, where you can actually provide for your family and have more options just because you're making more income, potentially making more income as a specialist, right? So high stakes. And again, she mentioned the interview preparation that we did together, and you guys can check out. That's one of the services down below. You can check that out and go to getintodentaldresidency.com. You can find out more about that as well. So interview prep, second cycle. You also mentioned a consulting position that you had. I think I forgot about that.
Yeah. Like I said, I was trying to expand on my extracurricular activities. I took the ADAT, but yeah, dental consultant. Basically for it's called more child developmental center. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. Forgive me. And I basically provide pamphlets to them every month. 5 dental facts and 1 animal dental fact. So I do that, provide like education from a distance. So
Yeah. Well, that's definitely in line and in alignment with pediatric dentistry, as far as a lot of outreach to schools and to organizations that focus on children and children's health, and then more specifically, um, oral health as well. So all of those things, and you mentioned the ADAT. Now, I want to talk about that real briefly because, like for ortho, not all programs require the ADAT. They'll accept it, but it's not a requirement. Now, for some of the programs, I know you mentioned you interviewed at about 14 you had 14 programs that you applied to. Of those 14, do you remember which ones or how many of those required the ADAT or no?
I remember because none of them required the ADAT. They, I looked, they accept it, but they don't, it's not required.
Okay. Okay. Well, quick tip for those of you watching and listening and applying, just because it's not required does not mean that you shouldn't not consider taking it, right? And one of the things, and one of the reasons is because, especially for PEDO, depending on the program, if they require it or not, but that shows that you're going and doing whatever it takes and going above and beyond what's required, right? And that's one of the ways that you can help to distinguish yourself from other candidates as well. So quick bonus tip there for those that you are considering. Again, it's not a requirement. They accept it. Again, just something to add to your candidacy and your application as well. So as part of the application also, you have to look at schools and programs, whether they're hospital-based programs or institution or school-based programs at dental schools. So let's talk a little bit about the number of schools, the types of schools and programs that you applied to, and the reasons why for you were looking at those programs as well.
Right. So majority were hospital based. One was a mixture of hospital and academic. They're really, UConn is really big on, the research, academia, and, just a mixture of both. But majority of the schools, I think all the programs that I applied to were all hospital except for UConn. And why? Mainly location and to expand, because the first time around, I only applied to 4 schools. Then the second time is mainly location, Northeast in that area. So New York, of course, Connecticut. And I also applied to Mass, but in the Springfield area. So yeah, that's the reason why.
And for those of you that are wondering why those 3 states, it's because she lives in those 3 states, right?
Northeast, as that's the location. So location
Yeah.
is really important. It's the primary, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things after you select your schools and your programs and you apply is the next primary step is waiting for the interviews, right? Yeah. Waiting for those invitations and waiting to hear, where you will need to prepare with your communication skills and figure out who you're going to talk to and why they need to select you and rank you on their list, right? So right. Let's talk about the interviews. Let's talk about the number of interviews that you had and the interview days. More specifically, if there were interview questions that were maybe above or beyond or something that you hadn't had in this whole series, if there was one program that had a couple of different types of questions, share with us a little bit more about that.
Right. So like I said previous, applied to 14 PEDO, and I also applied to 6 GPR, and 1 GPR interview and 3 PEDO interviews. And anything that stood out when it comes to questions? Yeah, I mean, first of all, majority of them asked the basic questions. Tell me about yourself, why our program, strengths, weaknesses, are you teachable? Those type of questions. But there was but some interesting questions that I
Oh,
received.
give us the interesting one. We want to hear those. We want to hear those.
Yes, one of the programs that I did interview, I will say they had a lot of questions. It was a lot of questions. And mind you, like I said, I prepared for those questions. I created my own questions, but there were more scenarios. It was
Right.
95% of their questions was all scenario. And one of the questions
Like,
she
what if this, what if that, what would you do?
right, what would you do right in that yeah, what would you do? And she asked me, she said, she was like, okay, what would you do if you had a patient and they had an older sibling and your patient picked a football? It's a female, you have a girl, patient. She picked a football, and the older siblings like, no, football's for boys. Here, have a tiara. And then she said, what would I do in that situation? And I basically said, well, in that situation, if there's no, ruckus, if they're not fighting, that's beyond, that's beyond my boundaries. That's not my place to try to redirect and say, hey, that's not, cool. It's okay to play with footballs or not. That's just not that's not within my scope, basically. But I also told her, I said, if there was a scuffle, and usually siblings, they scuffle, it happens. What I would do is say, guys, here, how about this? You have the football, you have the tiara, you guys share. And then let them proceed to, to have fun and, go with their parents and stuff like that. That was how I responded. But yes, definitely that was a interesting question for sure.
Yeah, and I think those types of questions are becoming a little bit more popular. So you guys are listening, watching. Be prepared for what if scenarios, right? Those types of questions where a patient may have a question, how would you respond? If there's clinic operations, if there's a down chair, or there's only but there's three residents working, and there are only two sets of instruments left for the day. What do you do? How do you handle it? Those types of scenarios, and we can go on and on. I have a list of all the different ones that I have heard candidates share. Have had candidates share with me over the years. So definitely, you guys want to practice with those scenarios, and also, like you said, not only having questions that being prepared to answer questions, but also you got to have your own list of questions.
Right.
Mandatory. You got to have your questions. So again, you guys are interested in learning more, go to getintodentalresidency.com for more information. So after your interviews, you got all these notes, and we talked about how to keep your notes together and reason why. And one of the main reasons why is because now you got to come up with your rank list.
Yes.
Right? You have to get your rank list together and know why you're putting certain schools. Now, sometimes what happens, folks, is you may have program A at number 1 and program B at number 2, but then after the interview, things could change, right, Doc? Things could change with that ranking just based on the interview, based on the vibe. So let's talk real briefly about your rank list and how you put those programs together, and if there was any difference from pre-interview time to post-interview time, if there was a change in your listing.
Right. So yeah, ranking was I wouldn't say difficult, but it was something that I had to try to navigate as best as possible. I chose One Brooklyn Health number 1 because I got to go there twice. I got to go there twice and fell in love. It felt right. It was just, this is where I could see myself being for the next 2 years. So that was number 1, just based off of feeling. Even with the interview, I gave 100%. Now, the only thing I would say with that interview, I wish I would have added was the second part of my personal statement. But because it was an in-person interview and then questions were being, given to me left and right, I forgot to add that. But the main premise, what I said earlier in, here today, was mainly because, pediatrics, I've been doing it for a long time. But even though with that I did not say what I said in my personal statement, I still put it as number one because it was the number one place I wanted to go. Number two, I put Mount Sinai because I learned from the first. I felt like I gave the perfect interview. I mean, all the questions, we talked, even the program director was able to give me some, not feedback, but she was like, oh, your letter of recommendation, they spoke very, very highly of you. So, and the reason why I put it number two is because I had a really good interview. Number three was St. Barnabas. Like I said, I prepared my own questions, ready to go. It was just that they had a lot of scenario questions, which was, I wish I would have, looking back, I wish I would have practiced more scenario questions. But otherwise, those questions were great. Even to the point where I said, can I think about that? Can you give me a second to think about that? Can you give me a second? So yeah, it was, I put them for number three only because one of the questions was, what procedures don't you like doing, or what's your least favorite procedure to do? And I mean, it was easy. It just rolled off the tongue. I said, I don't like doing root canals. I really don't. But I do them, but I don't like to do them. And I left it at that. And I wish I would have went back and said, oh, I do them, but if, with the right training and stuff, I'm willing to challenge myself, expand on that question. And another question, same person asked, you have a parent, you have your patient, and it's a sealant and one filling, but nothing in your room works. What do you do? So in my head, because again, I work in private practice, sometimes when one room is not working, all the rooms are not working. So I was just thinking in that way. So I was like, well, how do I? Well, then I could have to reschedule the patient because we're gonna have to call people. We're gonna, literally, I was saying this out loud. I was like, I don't know, we're gonna have to reschedule. And then she helped me with the answer in a way. She was just like, your room is not working. And because of that, I said, oh man, I wish she didn't help me. I wish I would have, you know what I mean? Like when they help you, kind of just dings you a little bit. It's like, oh no. But that's why I rated them number three, because she did kind of had to help me just a little bit with that question, because I was just going off of, what happens in reality. But she did. And from when she gave me that hint, I was able to answer the question pretty easily.
Yeah. And it's okay. You got a little help. I mean, it's to be expected, especially doing your training. They're going to be helping you along the way, right?
Right.
Help you build that muscle and build that expertise as well. So good. So you had your rank list. Yes. So let's share with everyone how match day went, because we know you matched. We just don't know where you matched. So right. So drum roll. Where's my band? I don't have my band today. It's Sunday. I guess the band is off. The band is performing at church, I guess. Drum roll or music, please. And you'll be taking your talents to
One Brooklyn Help.
One Brooklyn Help. Yes. Brooklyn in the house. Brooklyn. Actually, I think you're the second person in the last week that is going to Brooklyn.
Yay.
Going to Brooklyn.
That's right.
To represent. Congratulations.
I'm excited.
You should be. Oh man, this is so great. It's so great. So before we get into the next part, which is advice, I want you to share, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it would be helpful for those that are watching and listening that you share what has been or what was the hardest thing for you for this process, or the most challenging thing for you in this process, because there's people that are getting ready to apply that could benefit from understanding or knowing not only what some of the challenges that some people have, but what can be a roadblock in this process for them. So what was the hardest part for you?
During this whole process, I mean, there's a couple, but the fatigue of the interview, like going through interview fatigue,
Yeah.
that was the hardest. And I will say with Mount Sinai, and if they're watching, again, thank you so much for the invite. It's truly an honor, because I almost didn't get it, because I chose my time and date, and then they're like, oh, it's, no, it's not available. So I just said, honestly, thank you so much for the invite. This is an honor. This is a blessing. I'm just really excited for the email. And then fortunately, they were able to work it out, and I was able to do the interview, but I was at the very end, and it was, I mean, that's how interviews are. It happens, but I was really fatigued. I did not mentally prepare for that fatigue, but I was able to get through it, and even at the very end, was able to give a stellar interview, to at least in my opinion. That was my best interview. And like I said earlier, I'm not good at interviews at all. I'm really not. But it was great. So yeah, I would say interview fatigue too, because it's long. The interviews it's a long process.
Yeah, it's a long process, and it could be a couple weeks between interviews.
Right.
Like you said, scheduling them. There could be conflicts, and then the actual interview day.
Right.
The way it's set up, I mean, you're mentally and probably physically drained as well.
Right.
Right. But it's all part of the process, right?
It is.
The only way out is through.
Right.
You got to go through the process. So for those that are listening, also, they want to know about the process as to getting some tips, some advice. So knowing what you know now, what you've gone through, and your successful match the second attempt, what advice? Give us like 3 or 4 pearls of advice for the folks that are listening, especially those that are applicants that are going to be applying next cycle.
Right. So first advice would be to assess yourself, do some assessments. Where are your weak spots? Can you improve them? Another advice would be to, never give up, really work hard, never give up. Third advice, humble yourself, because when the first time I applied, I thought I was I believe I'm a great candidate, but in those schools' eyes, maybe I wasn't enough. I don't know. There's a reason why they didn't choose me for an interview, and that's okay. But it was definitely a humbling experience. So if you had the mindset like me, like, oh, I'm great. I think I'm going to get in, I'm going to get in. Humble yourself a little bit, just humble yourself. But overall, never give up, work hard. It's not a question of if you get in, it's a question of when will you get in.
Right. It's when. And just keep in mind, no means 2 things. It just means no right now at that program.
Right.
Or it means no also stands for new opportunity, as in new opportunity coming your way.
Right.
Right. And the only way that you lose or that you fail is if you give up. So great advice. Great advice.
Thank you.
What's the best way for people to contact you if they have questions or want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the programs that you apply to?
Right. So my email, you can reach me at my email day and night. I check it frequently. It's QAMUKAMA@asu.edu. Okay.
There it is, right up there. Check it out. There you go. You can contact Dr. Quinn. And Dr. Quinn, it's been a pleasure working with you, seeing this development from when we started, I guess in July. I don't know when it was. Not July, just
around that time.
Yeah, with July and with the CV, personal statement, and then getting the interviews and working through the logistics of the program and of preparing yourself for your interviews, because each program is different, so you have to prepare for them a little bit differently.
Right.
But it's just been a pleasure to assist you and help you through this process and actually come out on top and be smiling about your success. So board certification coming real soon. 2-year program, right? One Brooklyn Health, 2 years?
2 years, yes.
2 years. So we definitely want to follow up with you during this process, during your time at One Brooklyn Health, and that'll help with people who are applying and get a little bit more insight as to the program and what it's like as you are surviving the residency training over the period of time. And also, guys, take the time to look at these next videos. Hopefully these are helpful for you as well. And that's our time for today. Love, peace, and smiles. See you next week.